Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Some Things, Some Places at Certain Times. This episode, we are reviewing Dragon Ball Super Hero, and Sean is back for this episode.
Yes, I am. Hello.
And what's interesting here is Sean is in Japan. So you saw this movie, you said it was like 3 months ago or something?
Yeah, I saw it when it came out on June 11th, the day after it came out, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, so I
but I had
just
to
saw
watch
it.
it
Sorry, go
in
ahead.
Japanese, no subtitles. So uh, I understood a good 90% of the movie's dialogue.
Hmm. Interesting. They don't do well. I guess it's a Japanese movie in Japan. They wouldn't need subtitles. Yeah, but here I only saw it available in English, at least on the day I went. But personally, I prefer to watch Dragon Ball in English because that's how I grew up with it. So that's what I'm used to.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because for Dragon Ball in Japanese, Goku, Gohan, Goten, Bardock, Goku Black are all voiced by the same 80-year-old woman, Masaka Nasawa, and I cannot stand her voice.
Same. I listened to a bit. I think my when my brothers were watching Dragon Ball Super the series as it was coming out, they were watching it like the day it released, so they watched it in Japanese. And I was like, I don't like it. I don't like it. And maybe if I grew up with it, it wouldn't bother me. But I think because it's so not just because it's feminine, it's just different, from what we're used to with the English dub. It's been around for so long, and we're so used to it because they just have so many episodes, so many movies and video games. So yeah, I wouldn't change it at this point.
It's also because she's been voicing Goku since the original Dragon Ball when Goku was a kid, so they had a younger
Hmm.
lady or a 30-year-old lady voice her, and now she's like 80, still doing the voice of Goku and every other person in Goku's family. I just can't stand it.
I mean, it's great that they got the same person all this time, but yeah, it's just it's tough when it's a series that people watch when they're younger. Then they get used to a certain type. With some shows like My Hero Academia, I watch it in Japanese with subtitles, but of course, this show I've been watching forever, so I wouldn't change it now. But sometimes I see some like the Demon Slayer movie was available in Japanese with subtitles or in English, and I watched that in Japanese. But with Dragon Ball, I think only the English was available.
Yeah, that's typically the case with these releases because Dragon Ball is the classic show to watch in English.
Yeah, and I think the voice actors have always been great for that show. So it's I guess it sticks around in our market. So
Also, this is the first movie that doesn't have Vic Mignogna voicing Brawly because he's a sex pest. That was interesting. Or I guess the last one, the last Broly movie. But this continues the role of Vic Mignogna, the Broly voice actor, who also voiced Edward Elric, being cut from everything because he's a sex pest.
hmm, interesting, interesting. They're dropping like flies these days. Uh, yeah, but yeah. So let's get into it a bit. Avoiding spoilers, of course, as always, and then we will let you know when we start talking about spoilers. First things first, it's Dragon Ball. We got to talk about the action, the general plot of this movie. So yeah, this one takes place. Of course, it's the latest in the Super timeline, and Pan is how old is she in this one? Like 3?
Yeah, she's 3, turning 4. What do you know about the Dragon Ball timeline? Because Super takes place before the end of Dragon Ball Z.
I just know that. Wait, does it really before the end of Z?
Yes, exactly. That's the crazy part. Because at the end of Z, Pan is older. Goten and Trunks are older than they are now. So Super takes place somehow before the end of Z.
So the end of Z, the Boo saga.
No, no, no. The Boo Saga is not the end of Z. That's the Boo Saga. Then there's the last. The epilogue chapter is called the end of Z.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that. Was that TV episode or a movie?
No, no, it was an episode for the show. It's with Oob, the reincarnation of.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Now that you say that, I remember because in Super they mentioned that Oob was just like a baby or something.
yes, exactly. So like this, so the last episode of Z that's called the end of Z in the manga. That's before Super
You
or
mean
after
after
Super. It's
Super?
after Super. Yeah, it's after Super. So
Yeah.
all the stuff that happens in Super somehow just like that happens, and then we see this epilogue where they don't use Super Saiyan God or they don't use any of these new transformations, but like
Uh-huh.
they exist. Don't worry. It's poor writing.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those things where you realize it's part of the real life time frame of them making prequels, you know? So yeah, that's just how it is sometimes. But this one they have well, they don't have our main two, uh Goku and Vegeta. Avoiding spoilers, they're not the center of this movie. They're in the movie, but this story is mostly about um Gohan and Piccolo and Pan. I would say those
Thank
three
God.
are kind of the main cast, and as well as the new villains slash heroes, and the rest of the cast is in it as well. But I think it really centers around Gohan and Piccolo.
Which is a first for Dragon Ball movies, and it's a well welcome change because initially during Cell Saga they were going to make Gohan the main character. That was Akira Toriyama's main idea, but the editors were like, no, 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 Goku needs to be the main character of Dragon Ball. So I don't like Goku as a character at all. So I was really glad that he wasn't the main focus of something for once since the Cell Saga.
hmm I think it was interesting to see because I just remember knowing. I don't remember when or where I heard it, but I remember knowing that it was like said that Gohan could be stronger than Goku if he really tried, but obviously he's not as interested in being a career fighter. And they did mention that directly in this movie. So I think it's good how they kind of brought that up, and it was cool that he could show his strength and be a focus in this movie.
Yeah, it was really nice to see that as well. Lots of callbacks to like Cell Saga with like Gohan being strong, and I also like them finally giving Piccolo the spotlight too, because Piccolo and Trunks are my two favorite Dragon Ball Z characters, and Piccolo usually gets like sidelined for like in Way of the Sands. It's kind of racist.
hmm And Goten and Trunks also they were like all of a sudden they show up and they're big, and then he's like, who I don't remember who said it. Was it Piccolo? Was like, why the heck are you guys so big? And then they were
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh
Piccolo.
yeah, by the way, Saiyans just stay little for a long time and then poof, we get big. So there's something I didn't know before.
Yeah, it's been like referenced in the past as well. It's kind of like lots of things about how like Saiyans look young and then they look older. Like it's been a big thing in Dragon Ball. Like how after Cell Saga, uh, Gohan's just like a teenager, like pretty much an adult. They call that adult Gohan. So
hmm Yeah. So yeah, overall I liked it. It was good. A bit of a different focus, so it was kind of cool to see. And I thought it was kind of funny how in the beginning, when Piccolo is questioning Gohan. Oh, I'll save that for later. Save that for later. But
yeah, we talk about the animation because the animation was when I first saw the trailer, I was like, this looks like a video game. Like I don't want to watch this because
like
it
they
looks
went the
like
CG route.
yeah. But then once I started watching it, after 5 minutes in, I just like forgot about the fact that it was like CG. Like the trailer looked so corny and bad to me, but then once I start watching the movie, and they do the thing they do with all the recent Dragon Ball movies, where they like show a bunch of flashbacks of like everything that happened in the series at the start of the movie. When I watched like them do the series, but in the CG style, I was kind of just like, okay, I'm used to this now. Like this is normal.
Yeah, like I think the kind of animation, especially anime, that's in some ways maybe needed to take on more CG work because it's quicker and it helps the studios. I think it's come a long way and like it really looks like the animated version does. It's when they're moving, you can tell the difference, but in like a still image, it looks the same. And I think it's getting a lot better. Like the CG is much better able to mimic animation than it was maybe 5, 10 years ago.
Well, 5 years ago for sure. Like back when like Berserk came out in 2016, the TV show, not the movies. They were looked like PlayStation 2 games at the time when the PlayStation 4 was out, but now these look like actual good cutscenes from a video game. But the video game imagery still doesn't leave my mind because when I see like 3D characters, my first thought is like, oh, like it's like a video game because it's like 3D plus anime.
I think also especially because with Dragon Ball particularly, there's been so many video games for so long, and they've for a long time they've had that 3D kind of animation, the video game character dimension to it. Whereas even all the way up until the last movie, I think Broly was still mostly animated. I
Yes, it
been a
was. It was
while, but
beautifully
I'm
animated.
sure they had CG elements and animated elements, but I don't remember it being like this one seemed like everything was all the character work was pretty much CG.
Yeah, usually it's like just a little bit of CG backgrounds, but this one was like characters were CG, backgrounds were CG, everything was CG, and I didn't mind it. It was kind of surprising. I didn't mind it.
Yeah, it's like you said, you get used to it, and I think the images themselves, the art style looks very much like the animation would, and it's just a movement that gives it away, and you get over it pretty quickly. So
And then
the
the music was also very just original classic Dragon Ball music. They like played Shala, Head Shala, like the instrumental version in the background. Lots of like the classic uh, soundtrack from the original show was there. That was nice to hear.
hmm Yeah, I always like to hear those things, especially with a show that, as we mentioned, so many people watch growing up. It's just like it really takes you back, and it's nice to always be able to kind of go back to Dragon Ball, but also they're still making these new movies and this new content, so it's really interesting. So it
A funny
just kind of
caveat about that though is that like the American Dragon Ball release changed the soundtrack a lot to make it more like
hmm
action packed and good. And I prefer the American soundtrack by Bruce Faulkner. And
hmm
this so when I watch these movies, these Japanese movies, I'm like, oh, this is the Japanese soundtrack. But like the stuff like the opening and the ending songs, those are still like the same in the English version. But like lots of the cool, like really cool themes were just like American only.
yeah, I don't know if I've seen all of it with like both versions. I know some of the like re-releases or remasters or something used some more of the Japanese music and stuff. But yeah, I'm not. I probably don't know as much about the series as you do, but yeah, I've always liked the music. No matter which version I was watching, it was always good. So yeah, I enjoyed it for this movie as well.
Yeah,
So
I think that's pretty much all there is for like no spoiler stuff, right?
yeah, well, just we'll give a brief introduction with these new characters. The movie is about these superheroes, the androids. So the Red Ribbon Army is back, as you will see in the trailer, probably a poster as well. And they've got the two androids and another villain who I don't think is in the trailer, so we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, that was like this. That was a spoiler plot or the surprise plot twist.
hmm So yeah, so the new characters they look like classic, you know, Dragon Ball anime characters. And they even mention it in the movie, at least in the English version. They kind of talk about their look being like they're from the 90s or something, which is interesting because they're like part of the Red Ribbon Army, and that goes back to the original, which is from the 80s, 90s. So it's interesting. I think maybe they intentionally designed it to look like the characters that they made 40 years ago. So that would be I don't know the all the details behind the creation of it, but I'm sure that that was a very conscious decision of the artist.
Yeah, they look very like classic Dragon Ball characters, but like they still have the Dragon Ball Super design with like the way their faces look, like lots of very like modern, like Jacko, the Galaxy guy. I don't really know much about him, but I did like their physical, like how they actually look in terms of design, but their like personalities, at least in the Japanese version. For me, it was mainly the voices. I felt like the voices didn't fit for me, but I'm an American guy watching this in Japanese, so that's a big thing.
Hmm. Yeah, the voices for me they felt fine, like they fit, and it is actually, even though they are androids and they are basically twins, they did have two different voice actors, at least in the Japanese version. Let me look up the English version.
Yeah, they had because they had very different voices in Japanese as well, so that makes sense. Also, I like how they're continuing the theme of the last like three Dragon Ball movies of like first with Resurrection of F, they're like, oh, Frieza's back and he's stronger because he trained, or like Broly's canon now. But it's a story you already know. They're hashing in on the nostalgia, but not in a way that's like too irritating. But I think this
Hmm.
is a movie where they're catching on nostalgia, and it doesn't hit for me the way it should because it feels too much like a blatant cash grab or like just kind of like to get like, oh, you remember the Red Ribbon Army, you remember this, and I'm like, how are
Hmm.
they now as strong as Goku and Vegeta? Like Frieza said he's never trained in his life, so he trained and he was as strong as Goku and Vegeta again. That makes sense.
Hmm.
It's poor, but it makes sense. Or like Broly is just the strongest Saiyan, so that makes sense. But then
Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, we made new androids, and they can pretty much take down Goku and Vegeta. That's like implied with their strength. And I
yeah.
was just
It's
like,
it's not a lot of It's pretty quick, simple, not very in depth, but yeah, they're just like, let's make them come back and be stronger. And like you said, there's not much explanation to them this time. And I'm looking at it, the English androids, the two of them, they are different voice actors in the English one as well. Yeah.
yeah, it's good to know that they kept it consistent across the
Probably
dub.
could have noticed if I when I was watching it, I can't remember their voices right now. It's been almost a week since I watched it because, of course, it came out a long time ago for you, but it came out about 2 weeks ago as of when we're recording this in the United States, so it's pretty new here. All right, so shall we give it a quick rating and then get into spoilers?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you think?
Well, I usually don't give half scores, but I gave this one a 3.5, and I said that the movie felt like fan fiction at lots of moments and a filler episode at other moments. But the reason it's a 3.5 is because like I really liked it being like a Piccolo Gohan episode because we don't really get those. So it's like, hey, this is like instead of like every movie being like, oh, we're trying to fight this guy and then Goku saves the day in the end, it's like, nah, Goku's not going to save the day. So you're on your own. I liked that. So 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I can see your explanation now. It seems like fan fiction and filler. I didn't think anything was too like it never felt like the fate of the world was at stake, even though that's what they're going for with, probably every Dragon Ball movie. But yeah, it just felt like another one of those when they were cranking out dozens of Dragon Ball Z movies. It felt like it might have been able to be placed in with those. So I
It's
would
funny
give
how
it.
you mentioned the stakes though, because that was a thing that people were talking about with Nope when I saw it. That they felt like the stakes for Nope were also low. I want to talk to you about that later. Then
Mhm. All right, so I would give it. I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10, just because it's Dragon Ball and the action was good and I liked watching it. And they're not making the series anymore. It's just a movie every now and then. and it's just, I just really enjoy being in the theater watching a Dragon Ball movie because everyone who's there just enjoys watching this stuff because you just grew up with it and you love it. So, like, I appreciate that aspect of it, and the animation and everything was good. The visuals were still great, and like you said, it's a bit of a different story with the different main characters without Goku and Vegeta there to save the day. So I'll give it a 7 for that. It might be more of a 6, which is like, on its own, I'd probably give it a 6, which is like, I don't regret going to the movie theater to watch it. I'm just saying it's a 7 because of the love for Dragon Ball, really. So yeah, that's what
I
I
think the
say.
real question is how would you rate this compared to the last three Dragon Ball movies with Resurrection of F or Battle of Gods, Resurrection of F, and Broly?
Um, I think Broly was better than this one.
Broly's the best of the last three or four. I agree.
I don't think I saw Resurrection F. I watched the series, and they rehashed it in the series. So I don't know how
Right.
different the episodes are from the movie because I did watch Battle of Gods, and that movie and the episodes have quite a few differences to them. Um, and I liked Battle of Gods, but yeah, I think Broly is the best of the ones I've seen. I don't think any of them are as good as like the actual series, like the Goku Black, and especially the last like 5-10 episodes of Dragon Ball Super. I think are just absolutely phenomenal, and I think Broly is maybe the only one that comes close to that. But it is just a movie, so it feels like almost short. And I felt like that with this one too. Like the fights just felt kind of short, and I think it's just because they're movies when we're used to these big fights being over 5, 10, 15, 20 episodes.
Yeah,
So
five
it's
episodes of just screaming.
exactly like it's a whole episode just to charge up one attack or something.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's my only complaint, and I don't think that's really avoidable with the movies because they got to have like that first quick action introduction, take a step back, explain some things, gather the troops, and then head in for the final attack, and then a little lull in the battle before the actual final attack actually happens. So it's a lot to cover in a movie when we're used to this being spread out over a much longer time frame.
yeah. That's why I say this is easily the worst of the recent Dragon Ball movies. Starting from Battle of the Gods, this one is clearly, in my opinion, the worst.
Yeah, okay. Now, let's say from here on out, we're going to start talking about spoilers. Because leading off of that, I would want to say, and this is a spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, stop listening here. Leading off what you just said, and what we were just discussing, how it just feels too short with these movies. I think this one could have done a lot better with the surprise villain, Cell Max. If that was like just teased at and set up a future movie or something, and the Gammas were like the only villains in this movie because I feel like they're trying to do too much inside one movie. It's kind of like you said, like fan fiction.
Yeah, the Cell Max part is why I called it fan fiction. I honestly wish that entire part of the movie was just not a thing at all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just I would because it also made a Orange Piccolo and Beast Gohan a thing, and I'm like those Beast Gohan looks like a character you'd see on like DeviantArt in 2005. If you Google Super Saiyan 5, it looked like that, like the big hair with that's
Mm-hmm.
uh see white and just like red eyes. It's just like why we don't. This isn't what we want. And now it's like in Japan, all the Dragon Ball Super Arcade cabinet things that are terrible
Mm-hmm.
all have these characters on them now, and I don't like
Mm.
it.
Yeah, and it's like when Piccolo turned orange, I was like, well, I've never seen this before. He's got an extra bit of strength and he's a different color. And I was like, huh, that's just like Piccolo Orange. And then later in the movie, they're like, well, you gotta call this something. He's like, I guess I'd call it Orange Piccolo. And I'm like, oh, okay, they really went straight for it.
Yeah, that was how I thought about it too. They're kind of just like, oh, okay, we need to give Piccolo a transformation. He's never had one. I mean, he's had transformations, but they weren't like physical changes. So
Hmm.
they're like, let's give him one. And I
Yeah.
also think it was weird how it was like just he has wished Shinron for more power. Like
Uh huh.
they've never thought about doing that before.
Yeah, like why? Yeah, why did they never do that? Why didn't they do that every time there's a threat? And also, like, I mean, it's funny that they just forgot to wish for Goku and Vegeta, but like that was the first thing I was thinking of. I'm like, if you're going to the Dragon Balls to make yourself stronger, why don't you just wish for the stronger people to come here? And I feel
Or
like it
why not
was
just wish it to not happen? That's like I don't get things about the Dragon Balls. I know it has they have like rules or something, but it's just
hmm
like if the whole point of the series is that there's seven magic balls that grant you whatever you wish, it's like what the good guys always have them. That's like
yeah.
that's like an established thing now. Is that Bulma just keeps them to like wish for her ass to be fatter. It's just
hmm
like
Yeah,
you guys been talking about.
if they could have done something like they wished for him, and then Shenron was like, "Oh, it seems like they're on a god's planet, so I can't transport them here or something." Like, then that would have been totally fine. But just forgetting them, and it was funny, but again, it was like
At least
it was
they
too
called it out.
obvious. There are some movies where someone forgets something, and I'm like we mentioned in the last one when we were talking about Thor, when, and if you haven't seen Thor, this is a spoiler, but they get to the end and he's like, "Why don't you just wish for your daughter back?" And I was like, "Oh, actually, I didn't think about that during the whole movie, so it's not that crazy." But with this one, it was like it was so obvious. It was a little too, like they were just. It just seemed almost pointless.
And the fact they didn't like they made a joke about it made it even more like okay, so this is like fan service. They want the audience to see Piccolo and Gohan have this big fight.
hmm Yeah, they could have easily just said we don't have the Dragon Balls, or they could have easily just had who was it, Dende, like actually be able to unlock his power, or maybe he just was able to push through and unlock it himself, like most of the other characters throughout the whole series.
Yeah, but also there's like this movie had some references that made other things now canon because I guess I don't understand the Dragon Ball canon anymore ever since they started making the Super manga plus Super plus like it's whack. But if you looked at during the movie when they were showing Doctor Hedo, his family tree, it shows
Mm-hmm.
that uh, Dr. Jiro's wife, Vomi, is now canon, who was in the Dragon Ball Fighters video game, was introduced as Android 21. Uh, so now things that started in the video game are now becoming canon in the series. Also, their son being the model for Android 16 is now also canon
Mm-hmm.
through this.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, is that the android? And then I figured it must have been. I didn't know the history of that concept, but I figured clearly they didn't have an android kid. Although, with Dragon Ball, it's not like that would be that crazy. But
Yeah, and then also they kept the naming scheme with Dr. Jiro, his family. So Jiro is like a Japanese onomatopoeia for like to barf, and then
mm,
so was Hado. So then I guess they ran out of things, so they just named the wife Vami as in vomit, and I was
uh-huh,
just like that one's very obvious. Like even if you don't like how the gods are all named after like alcohol. Whis is whiskey, beerus is beer. Like or
uh-huh,
in the stands are all fruits. Uh, but the Jiro line being just ways to say vomit, kind of like okay, that's not very cool or clever. It's kind of just kind of okay. Y'all are trying to do something, but I don't really like it.
hmm yeah, I think I mean, it's one of those Dragon Ball things where all these families or races have all these naming schemes. So it's just, I guess, kind of typical for the series. And, I didn't know that about the Hedo and Jiro. So, as an American who doesn't know any Japanese, then that doesn't really come across my mind. It
But
just
like,
sounded like it kind of rhymed. That's it.
yeah, but when you see like Vomi, people, the American fans were like, "That sounds like vomit," and I was like, "That's the point," but also like that's yeah, that it does when you
Hmm.
see Vomi, you're like vomit. That's not cool. Uh, yeah. So overall, the spoiler stuff, I really hated Cellmax. I thought Cellmax was stupid. What and you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's just weird. Anytime they have I would say like the size of the character being so big, I think is a little weird. I think those fights are always just a little hard to like show the difference in the sizes of the characters and like a proportionate level of strength. Like
Yeah,
it's just they don't, because they're such different sizes, they the thought of how these characters move when they're interacting with each other, it just doesn't really translate as well.
I feel like maybe that was just to be able to call back to Piccolo being able to turn giant, but at the same time, I really don't feel like that was the case. I feel like they wanted to have this giant villain that like just wreaks havoc on everyone and is destructive, and that's
Uh-huh.
just
And the thing
never
is, like,
fun.
Cell was never like that. Cell is one of the best villains in the whole series and in all of like action animation.
I
And
agree.
he's so, intelligent and cerebral and everything. And this character was, like you said, like a mindless giant who just goes around and destroys things. And I know they said because they released him too early and he was supposed to, like, they said it was like if you release him this early, you're not going to be able to control him. He's gonna just go crazy or whatever. But like, they still made the character that way for this movie. Whereas they could have maybe, like I said, they could have teased at it and set him up for a future one, and he could have been like a really good villain.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you noticed, but when Gohan turned Beast Gohan, they did the same exact thing that Gohan did in the Cell Saga when he turned Super Saiyan 2, where the screen turns black and there's like a red line through it because he saw like 16 die. When he thought that he saw Piccolo die, the
Mm.
same thing happened. I was like, that's a really cool callback. That's like one of the coolest moments in Dragon Ball. Was that scene where Gohan just turned Super Saiyan 2?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of like you said, it's like so much of a kind of a cash grab. Like, I know that they were saying they would be making more of these Dragon Ball Super movies, which I'm happy about. But I know there's more to the manga that they could adapt, and this one just seemed like it wasn't so much about. I don't know how much, if this is the way Toriyama wanted it, but it just felt like it was one of those things where they're like, "Oh, we're not ready to do a movie about this new content. Let's just go back to all the old stuff." It's kind of like Star Wars Episode 7. It's just like, let's reskin everything from, decades ago and do it all again, just a little bit different. Call it a sequel.
Yeah, I have a radical hot take just in general.
Hmm.
Like basically, so Toriyama's 67. He's getting up there. My thing is, once you're 75, you shouldn't be able to do anything at all. Period. Joe Biden, our president right now, uh, he's over 75. I don't think he should be able to do anything. Masuka Nozawa, the voice of Goku, she's 80. She shouldn't be able to do anything. I feel like once you reach 75 and Toriyama's getting there, you start forgetting things. You start like forgetting how your characters work. You start just forgetting how life works. You should just, just be placed aside and be able to be in your little like old folks home. 75 is that age. I'm personally believe that.
Yeah, I wonder if you know, is this were the decisions for this movie, like, was this concept in general, the plot and all the characters and stuff, was this Toriyama's decisions, or was this maybe the studio stepping in and?
No, it was all mostly written by somebody else, from what I understand.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
so.
he was still like part of the decisions for this movie, which was interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. I think correct me if I'm wrong if you know the answer, but I think there's just like one more saga in the manga.
No, this is not.
No, no, like there is one more from
Oh yeah,
where the
yes, yes,
series
there
left
is.
off.
There is. Yes, there is.
And so I mean, I wish they would bring the series back and they would do that. Has it have they said if this the manga's over or
Uh,
what's like the status of it?
the manga still comes out. I see it all the time at 7-Eleven, and I
Okay.
don't read it because it feels like fan fiction sometimes.
Mm,
Like I feel like everything that at the Tournament of Power was good, and then
mm,
after the Tournament of Power they put Broly in there. That's good, but then after that there's like new villains that I haven't really got into. I'm saying it
mhm.
feels like fan fiction only because I haven't really read it yet, and I see the character designs, and I'm like, this looks stupid. But
I just know there's that one villain. I can't remember his name right now, but it's the like the goat
Mora,
looking dude.
yeah, Mora,
Yeah. Is do you
or
know are
Moro,
they
Mora.
still on that saga?
I don't think so. I think they're right past that. I might be wrong though,
All
because
right.
now like Vegeta has his own like god form now. Like
Hmm.
it's called like a new transformation called like Vegito Ego, and I'm just like, okay, this is or Ultra Ego instead of Ultra Instinct. It's Ultra Ego, and I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, this just seems like I liked Ultra Instinct when it first happened, but then like I feel like that should have been the end. That should have been like I hate when they add new
Oh, you know
transformations.
what? I wonder if the ending, the little mid-credit scene in this movie, is maybe the start of what might lead to that. You know,
I don't know.
because they you know, in the at the end, did you stay through the credits or you left right away?
Yeah, I always say through the end. The sparring match ended and Vegeta won.
Yeah. So I wonder if he's gonna now grow an inflated ego and get even stronger.
I
But
don't know what Ultra Ego even is, man.
yeah, but I don't know. I haven't read the manga either. But you know, I wish they would bring the series back. But I think maybe if they're waiting for a couple more sagas to come out, then you know maybe that's why I don't know. Or if they're just gonna adapt it all into movies from here on. But you know, like I've said a few times now, it just seems like a movie isn't long enough for what we're used to with Dragon Ball.
Especially the character development. So yeah, I agree all the
Hmm.
way.
Yeah, especially with like the Tournament of Power where the series left off. They had so many characters, and you know they took their time. They had a few episodes for each big fight with each character, and you know if you had that like with this movie, I felt like they were trying to put too many characters in it. You know, they had the Gammas, and then they pretty quickly turned against their overlords, so to speak, and then yeah, and then it was just Cell Max was in it for a little bit. I did like the fight with Cell Max in some ways, just artistically. When was it Gamma 2? It came down and tried to deliver the final blow. I thought that bit was really good. And then the final bit, anytime they show big moves, lots of colors, bright lights and everything, I'm a
And the
fan of
power struggle,
that
like yeah,
action.
two beams hitting each other. That's always a cool thing to see.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I mean, I had the classic, big move stuff that you love to see from Dragon Ball, which was still good, but I think in general, I think we're kind of both agreeing the plot was just subpar.
Yep. I
Yeah,
think that's
so
all then. Yeah.
hmm yeah, was there anything else spoiler related that we wanted to go over now that in terms of anything else, acting or anything? Oh yeah, one of the first things I was gonna say, the beginning when Piccolo is like ridiculing Gohan for not training, and he's like, and Gohan's like, I don't think we're gonna get attacked by another, world-ending threat. Like, how often can that happen? It's like, well, the whole point of the show is it happens all the time, and and then it happens like an hour later in the time frame of this movie. So it's like, well, then he shows up. He's like, "Damn, I guess I should have trained." But yeah, it's kind of like they're calling out their own silliness of the series and anime in general. It's the whole point of the show is to show these fights. So obviously, there's constant threats.
Yeah, I miss old Dragon Ball.
But yeah, I liked it. The English voice acting was all very good. I think it was all the same actors that have been around, so it wasn't much of a surprise. It was all the same voice actor for Gohan, Goten, Goku. So it's yeah, I don't think there were any changes from that. And the character, the one thing I thought was a bit weird was they showed Krillin seemed a bit cowardly to me. It's been a while since I watched the series. I don't remember if that's normal for his character, but it was like, he's been through some stuff. I think he could handle this. And they didn't realize how tough the fight was going to be, when they arrived. So it was like, he was kind of being cowardly before he had a reason to be, in my opinion.
That's like what the way Krillin's character is now, just because of like how he became weaker because he stopped training and became a police officer. Whereas like Tien kept training, everyone else kept training, but Krillin stopped training. I think it's like in Dragon Ball, when you stop training, you're just useless.
Yeah. But I mean, Gohan doesn't train, and then he gets a whole movie about him and finds a new level of strength.
It's because Piccolo made him wear that weighted clothing for like an hour. He was just like, okay, now I'm strong again, which is
Oh
also
yeah, that's right.
stupid.
He trained for a good, you know, 5 minutes of screen time. So, yeah. But yeah, I think I mean I'm interested to see where they go from here. Of course, I want to see more. I want to see better stuff though. And now that I'm talking about it with all the spoilers and stuff, I think I would rate this a 6.
Wow.
Yeah, which is still good. I still enjoy it. But it's not like for a Dragon Ball fan, I'd say it's a 7. Go to the theater, go see it. It's Dragon Ball. But just as the movie itself, without the I guess fanboy perspective, it's nothing really special.
I agree.
Yeah, Broly was really good. Broly was really fun to watch. So that's
Yeah, it was beautiful, but
mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
one not so much. This one, I'm sorry, this one just it's just the worst of the recent Dragon Ball movies. I've said that before. I'll say it
Mm-hmm.
again.
I think the Broly one found a way to bring the character into this new line of canon that they've been doing since Super started, um, and like rewrite the Broly from the old movie, but still make it like recognizable. He still had that like not the cape, but the thing he drapes around his waist. It was different than the
Yeah,
original, but they had it and they gave it a cool reason in this one, cool backstory. And so it's still like those recognizable character traits and designs, but just tweaked a little bit and given a bit more, I guess, logic to them. So it's yeah, it was just like Broly is great, great. I could watch that over and over. This one, you know, I'm glad I saw it. I'm not gonna obsess over it.
yeah. No, I'm not gonna see it again. Probably.
What was the kind of general reaction to it in Japan as a whole?
It was, I mean, widely loved. Like in terms of like not McDonald's. Family Mart, one of the big convenience stores, was giving out like merch for it. You can it was kids were wearing this kids I teach were wearing like red ribbon army shirts they got from campaigns for the movie. It was really big. But I realized watching this movie compared to watching Broly, I saw Broly in Japan as well on vacation, and I saw Broly again in America when it came out. And just the American audiences are so much more fun because they're like they get hype at the movies because it's like it's hard not to, you know. You
Hmm.
grow up watching these and getting hyped to it. So that was the big letdown in Japan was like when Beast Gohan happened, they just like no one even like gasped, you know.
Hmm. I think it's a bit of the, just the crowd culture as well, because from watching like professional wrestling, if you watch an American show, WWE, and people are cheering before the match even begins, then that's like top notch. You know people are excited. But in Japan, Japanese wrestling, which is like much more realistic, much more sport like, and in terms of the actual sport, it's like the best in the world. They do it at the biggest show of the year. They're very quiet. They don't make a lot of noise during the match. It's very quiet at the beginning, and it's only if the match goes on a really long time do they start cheering, start clapping, and stuff like that. Only like the top matches. So I think maybe that's part of just the culture and how they watch a show in general. But also, I think I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Dragon Ball is super popular, but I've heard in some ways it's even more popular in the Americas, all of the Americas. I know
Yeah,
Dragon Ball
in
is
Latin America.
super huge in Latin America. Of course, it's huge in the USA. So I've heard like in terms of I guess relative to other shows, I think Dragon Ball is way above like anything else in the Americas, and I don't think it has that same level in Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's super popular over here, but it's just as classic. But no, in Japan, in America, in the Americas, it's like they were selling out streets in Mexico to watch the Dragon Ball Super finale, and that like didn't happen in Japan because of like people in Japan just watch it on TV at home, but like people went to like watch it in public in Mexico, and they were like having festivals over it.
Hmm. I think maybe it's also because it's Japan, and they have so much more. They have so much more anime that they probably get all the time. Like the stuff that makes it over here is only like the best stuff. And of
Yeah,
course, lots of people go online and watch all kinds of shows, but the stuff that's popular here is the best stuff. Whereas they're like, they got all the best, all the mediocre, all the bad stuff. So I think it's this trend I see with lots of things where people might think, oh, British TV is always great. It's like, well, we're just not getting the trash shows. Like, just the best stuff makes it over here. They probably think everything the USA produces is amazing, but we got, 500 channels of trash all the time, but they just don't watch it. So I think maybe it's the same thing, but I do think there's a level of hype to it in the Americas that's like nothing else.
yes, absolutely. Just like pro wrestling, it just Americans can just get hype over stuff. People in the Americas more so than I
Hmm.
guess like physically hype
Yeah.
compared
I'd
to
wonder
in
even if
Japan.
in concerts in Japan, if they have that more, uh, not repressed, but the more quiet reaction in concerts. Maybe it's just the crowd culture in general. But at least
They
from what I've noticed from the
they
things
get
where
hype
I
at
watch
concerts.
American and Japanese versions, that's what I've noticed.
Mm.
Yeah, were
Yeah,
you saying
I think
something?
that's it. I think that's it for everything I have to say about this movie.
Yeah, I
And
think that's pretty
if
much
Dragon,
all I got to say. Once again, I give it, for a Dragon Ball fan, I say go see it, which would, kind of make it a 7 in my book. But as a movie on its own, I say it's 6 out of 10.
yeah, and for me, I'm saying 3.5 out of 5. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, if not, honestly, maybe 2 out of
Yeah,
5.
especially if you don't like Dragon Ball, then, it's Dragon Ball. So it is Dragon Ball. So if you like it, you're going to like it just to see it. And it's been a couple years since the last one. So it's just nice that there's something out again. I hope there's more. I hope they make more movies. And I hope they show more of. what's been building up in the manga. I hope they show more of the characters that were in this movie. I'm glad they got the spotlight on some characters who are not normally the center of attention. But in the end, I won't be going crazy talking about this movie all the time.
Yeah, overall, kind of. If it weren't for the transformations, completely forgettable.
hmm Yeah, had a couple highlights, but overall, yeah, nothing too special. But we got a couple new characters. Maybe they'll show up in the future. Maybe they can become even better in the future. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I wonder if the new characters, if the Gammas and Dr. Hedo are going to become part of the gang or anything. But we'll see. And now Chunks and Goten are big, so I assume they'll keep their new character designs for the upcoming projects, whatever they got going on in the next couple years.
I can only pray for consistency.
hmm Yeah, unless they do a prequel or something. I don't think they'll do that. But yeah, so that's all I got for this one.
Same here. So I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah, all right. So if you made it this far, thank you for listening. And hopefully you'll listen to us next time. I believe the next thing we'll be doing is Nope. And so
Nope.
hopefully we'll be recording that soon. So thank you for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the movie and this
Hope you enjoyed this
podcast.
podcast. Yep.
Yeah, this episode will also be uploaded to YouTube as well. So you can like and share it, and you can share it on Spotify as well. So thank you for listening.
Bye.